In the 1960s, America was racing to put a man on the moon, but down on the ground, a different kind of race was happening. Caterpillar, International Harvester, Allis-Chalmers, Euclid, and Komatsu were locked in an all-out war to build the most powerful bulldozers the world had ever seen. Twin-engine monsters, power-shift transmissions, turbocharged diesels, and machines so big they could push-load the largest scrapers ever made. These are 10 bulldozers from the 1960s that changed construction forever. Number 10. The Caterpillar D6C. We start with a machine that might not be the biggest or the most powerful on this list, but it is arguably the one that changed the most lives, the Caterpillar D6C. The D6C was introduced in 1963, and it represented a major evolution of the D6 family, which had its origins all the way back in 1935, when the first RD6 rolled off the assembly line with a 3-cylinder, 45-horsepower engine. By the time the D6C arrived, the machine had been completely transformed into a modern, powerful construction tool. The D6C was powered by a Caterpillar D333 engine, producing approximately 140 horsepower. It came with a power-shift transmission that allowed operators to change gears under full load without stopping the machine, a feature that dramatically increased productivity on the job site. The machine weighed approximately 16 tons and could be equipped with a variety of blade configurations, including straight blades, angle blades, and U-blades. What made the D6C truly revolutionary was its versatility. It was big enough to handle serious construction work, but small enough to be transported on a standard lowboy trailer without special permits. This made it the machine of choice for contractors who needed to move between job sites frequently. Road builders, subdivision developers, pipeline contractors, and general earth-moving firms. The D6C was produced through the 1970s, and its impact was enormous. It became one of the most common dozers on construction sites across North America, Europe, and the developing world. Many D6C machines are still working today in parts of Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, where their mechanical simplicity and ease of maintenance make them invaluable. The D6C did not just change construction, it democratized it, putting serious dozing power in the hands of small and medium contractors who previously could not afford the bigger iron. Number 9. The Allis-Chalmers HD21. The Allis-Chalmers HD21 was the flagship of one of America's most respected heavy equipment manufacturers, and during the 1960s it was the machine that gave Caterpillar fits in the date class market. Introduced in 1955, the HD21 was an 84-inch gauge tractor that competed directly with Caterpillar's date. It was powered by an Allis-Chalmers HD84 6-cylinder, inline, supercharged diesel engine rated at 204 flywheel horsepower at 1,800 RPM. The transmission was an Allis-Chalmers manufactured torque converter drive with 2 forward and 1 reverse range, and a power shift transmission was later offered as an option before eventually becoming standard. In 1956, Allis-Chalmers upped the ante by fitting a turbocharged version of the engine, the HDT844, which boosted output to 225 flywheel horsepower. This was a significant power increase that kept the HD21 competitive against the increasingly powerful Cat-8 models. The HD21 was particularly beloved in forestry applications, where its well-balanced design and smooth power delivery made it ideal for skidding timber and building logging roads. Operator comfort was also a priority. Deeply upholstered seats were a hallmark of Allis-Chalmers tractors, and the HD21 even included a smaller buddy seat for a trainee or relief operator. Unusually for a tractor of the 1950s and 1960s, the HD21 came with a muffler as standard equipment. Initially, Allis-Chalmers relied on outside suppliers for attachments. Companies like Baker, Garwood, Tractomotive, Ateco, Pullman Standard, Histor, and Coco supplied blades, winches, cable controls, and rippers. By the late 1950s, however, Allis-Chalmers was manufacturing almost all of its own attachments apart from logging winches. The HD21 remained in production for nearly 14 years, and during that time it established Allis-Chalmers as a genuine challenger to Caterpillar in the heavy dozer market, a competitive position that the company maintained through the rest of the decade with the even larger machines that would follow. Number 8. The International Harvester TD25. International Harvester was Caterpillar's oldest and most determined rival in the crawler tractor market, and the TD25 was their heavyweight champion during the 1960s. The TD25 was International Harvester's answer to the Caterpillar Date and the Allis-Chalmers HD21. The TD25C model, which became the most widely produced version, was powered by an International DTI-8 17B 6-cylinder, turbocharged and aftercooled diesel engine rated at 285 flywheel horsepower, a serious amount of power that kept IH competitive at the top end of the dozer market. The TD25C connected its engine through a torque converter to a 2-speed power-shift transmission with a high and low range, effectively giving the machine 4 forward and 4 reverse speeds. International Harvester also offered a manual transmission option with 8 speeds and an oil clutch for operators who preferred direct mechanical control. Standard attachments included a 13-foot straight or S blade, a 15-foot angle blade, and an 18-foot full U dozer. These could be cable or hydraulically controlled, though hydraulic control became standard from the C model onward. All blades were manufactured by International Harvester in-house, a significant change from earlier models that had used attachments supplied by Allied and Bucyrus Erie. The TD25 had an extraordinarily long production life. After International Harvester sold its construction equipment division to Dresser Industries in 1982, the TD25 continued under the Dresser name. When Komatsu acquired a 50% share of Dresser in 1987, the tractor line was eventually sold to HSW Industries of Poland in 2005, where the TD25 continues to be produced today under the Dresser TD25H designation. That a machine designed in the 1960s is still being manufactured in the 2020s speaks volumes about how well International Harvester got the fundamentals right. Number 7. The Caterpillar D8H. The Caterpillar D8H was not just a new model, it was a complete reinvention of what a D8 could be. Introduced in 1958, the D8H set new standards for power, versatility, and operator control that would define the medium-large dozer category. The D8H was a ground-up redesign featuring a wider 84-inch gauge, a solid equalizer bar replacing the multiple spring type used in earlier models, and hydraulically actuated steering clutches. Under the hood sat a turbocharged version of the Cat D342T engine, initially rated at 225 flywheel horsepower. In 1961, output was raised to 235 horsepower, and a further increase in the mid-1960s pushed it to 275 flywheel horsepower. But the real game changer was the power shift transmission. The D8H46A series, introduced in 1959, featured a 3-speed forward and reverse power shift transmission manufactured by Caterpillar. This allowed operators to shift gears under full power without stopping or losing momentum, a revolutionary capability that dramatically increased productivity in dozing applications. The PowerShift D8H was so popular that Caterpillar USA produced over 33,000 of them before the model was replaced by the D8K. In another first for the date, Caterpillar manufactured the D8H outside the United States, at the Berkeley plant in the United Kingdom. Tractors built at this facility bore distinct serial number prefixes: 22A for direct drive, 52A for torque converter, and 68A for PowerShift models. Approximately 4,300 PowerShift machines were built at the UK facility alone. The D8H could be found in virtually every application imaginable: mines, quarries, general earth-moving, forestry, road construction, dam building, and military operations. Its combination of power, reliability, and the new PowerShift transmission made it the dozer against which every competitor was measured throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s. Number 6. The EVCL. If there is one machine on this list that proves engineers in the 1960s were genuinely insane in the best possible way, it is the Euclid TC-12. The TC-12 was a twin-engine bulldozer designed by the Euclid division of General Motors. Unlike the experimental tandem tractors that companies like Peterson and others had tried in the late 1940s and early 1950s, which essentially bolted two standard dozers together, the TC-12 was designed from the ground up to handle the output and weight of two powertrains. Each side of the TC-12 had its own Detroit Diesel 671 engine and its own transmission, producing a combined output of approximately 400 horsepower. Looking at the machine from the back, you could see straight down the middle to the blade up front. It literally looked as if two dozers had been fused together. Each engine drove one track independently, giving the TC-12 the ability to pivot in place and steer using the brakes, the throttles, or each transmission independently. An interesting detail of the TC-12's development was that General Motors assigned a stylist to the project. Charles M. Jordan, who later became famous as the chief designer for Cadillac in the 1960s and GM's overall chief designer in the 1980s, worked on the TC-12's appearance. The result was a machine painted in Euclid's iconic lime green that, while built purely for function, had an unmistakable and imposing silhouette with its dual smokestacks and wide stance. The first two prototypes were operational in 1954, and one unique design feature was placing the radiators behind the operator. This blew dust away from the operator and protected the radiators from damage caused by material boiling over the blade. A total of 901 TC-12 machines and successor 8280 models were produced before the design was discontinued by Terex in 1974. The TC-12 was primarily used in road construction, mining, and dam building. Anywhere you needed brute pushing force over finesse. Several restored examples survive today and are regular crowd pleasers at vintage equipment shows. Number 5. The Caterpillar D9G. Now we come to one of the most legendary bulldozers ever built, the machine that defined the heavy dozer category for an entire generation. The Caterpillar D9G was introduced in 1961 with 385 horsepower, making it the most powerful single-engine bulldozer Caterpillar had produced at that time. It was powered by the massive Cat D353 engine, a 1,473 cubic inch diesel that had powered the D9 series since its 1955 introduction, but now tuned to extract maximum power. The D9G remained in production for 13 years, a remarkably long run that testified to how thoroughly Caterpillar had gotten the design right. It became the main crawler on many of the largest construction sites in the world, handling everything from strip mining to highway construction to dam building. But the D9G's influence went far beyond its individual accomplishments. In 1965, West Coast businessman Buster Peterson hooked up a pair of D9Gs to push-load the largest wheel tractor scrapers ever built. The concept was so successful that in 1968, Caterpillar bought the rights to Peterson's design and created the DD9G, a dual D9G with a combined 770 horsepower. The DD stood for Dual D9G, and it was essentially two D9G powertrains coupled together driving a single massive undercarriage. Peterson also built the first side-by-side D9G, which placed two complete D9G tractors next to each other, pushing a 24-foot wide bulldozer blade with only one operator controlling the entire coupled machine. In 1969, Caterpillar introduced its own production version of the side-by-side D9G, giving contractors even more options for ultra-heavy dozing work. The D9G also had a distinguished military career. The Israel Defense Forces used D9G machines extensively, and armored variants saw action in conflicts around the world. The machine's combination of power, durability, and reliability made it the standard against which all heavy dozers were judged throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s. Number 4. The Caterpillar D9H. While the D9H technically arrived at the very tail end of our era, its development and design were rooted firmly in the engineering advances of the 1960s, and it represented the culmination of everything Caterpillar had learned from the D9G. The D9H was introduced in 1974 with 410 horsepower, making it the most powerful conventional track-type tractor in Caterpillar's entire history, a record it still holds to this day. That is an extraordinary claim. In over 50 years since the D9H was introduced, Caterpillar has never built a more powerful conventional single-engine dozer. The D9H took the D9G's proven foundation and added improved hydraulics, a refined power shift transmission, and enhanced operator controls. The result was a machine that could push more material per hour with less operator fatigue, a combination that translated directly into higher productivity and lower operating costs. Like its predecessor, the D9H spawned both dual and side-by-side configurations. The D9H and the SXS D9H gave contractors the option of combining two D9H powertrains into a single machine with over 800 horsepower for the most demanding dozing and push-loading applications. The D9H was the machine that solidified Caterpillar's dominance in the heavy dozer market. Its power, reliability, and the extensive dealer support network that stood behind it made it the default choice for mining companies, highway departments, and major contractors around the world. When people think of a classic Cat dozer, the kind of machine that can move mountains, they are thinking of the D9H. Number 3. The Allis-Chalmers HD41. While the HD41 technically arrived in 1970, its development happened entirely during the 1960s, and its impact was felt immediately. The Allis-Chalmers HD41 was, at the time of its introduction, the largest and most powerful bulldozer in the world, and it terrified the competition. The HD41 weighed 80 tons and was powered by a Cummins VT1710C four-cycle turbocharged engine, producing 524 horsepower. It featured a torque converter and a power shift transmission with 3 speeds forward and 3 in reverse. The machine offered semi-U, full U, and cushioned push hydraulically controlled blades up to 20 feet wide. Between 1970 and 1974, an impressive 1,900 HD41 units were built, a remarkable production number for a machine of this size. The HD41 was used primarily in large-scale mining operations, where its massive blade and enormous pushing power could move volumes of overburden that would take multiple smaller dozers to match. The HD41 represented the peak of Allis-Chalmers' ambition in the heavy equipment market. For decades, the company had competed fiercely against Caterpillar and International Harvester, gradually building larger and more powerful machines. The HD41 was the culmination of that effort, a machine designed to be the absolute biggest and most powerful dozer available from any manufacturer. After Fiat Spa formed a joint venture, the HD41 evolved into the Fiat Allis-41B in 1982, and later the FD50, with a Cummins VT28C engine pushing output to 600 horsepower. Although production ended in 1989 and the brand was discontinued in 1999, the HD41 remains a landmark machine that proved there was a commercial market for super-heavy dozers, paving the way for the even larger machines that followed from Caterpillar and Komatsu. Number 2. The Peterson Twin D9G. At number 2, we have what might be the most audacious dozer concept of the 1960s. And it was not built by a manufacturer at all. It was built by a contractor. Buster Peterson was a West Coast earth-moving contractor who, in 1965, did something that the engineers at Caterpillar had not attempted. He took 2 Caterpillar D9G tractors and coupled them together into a single tandem machine to push-load the largest wheel tractor scrapers ever built. The tandem concept was not entirely new. Peterson and other contractors had experimented with coupling pairs of Cat dates and even Allis-Chalmers HD19s together in the late 1940s and early 1950s. The resulting machines were nearly twice as wide as single tractors and could handle significantly more material because the doubled horsepower was applied to custom-designed extra-wide blades. But while performance increased dramatically, these early tandem machines were cumbersome to operate, clumsy to maneuver, and brutalized their undercarriages, which had been designed for the weight and power of one powertrain, not 2. Peterson's D9G tandem was different because it used the vastly more powerful D9G as its base, and the coupling system was refined to be more practical and controllable than earlier attempts. The concept worked so well that Caterpillar took notice and, in 1968, bought the rights to Peterson's design. The result was the DD9G, the factory-built dual D9G with a combined 770 horsepower. Peterson also developed the side-by-side configuration, which placed 2 D9Gs next to each other, behind a single 24-foot blade controlled by one operator. Caterpillar introduced its own production side-by-side D9G in 1969. Peterson's innovation did not just change how dozers were used, it changed how manufacturers thought about the upper limits of dozer power. The success of the tandem and side-by-side concepts directly influenced Caterpillar's decision to develop the D10 in the 1970s, which packed all that power into a single-frame machine. Without Peterson's bold experiment in 1965, the superdozer era might never have happened. Number 1. The Komatsu D155A. At number 1, we have the machine that changed the global bulldozer industry, not by being the biggest or the most powerful, but by proving that Caterpillar was not invincible. The Komatsu D155A. In the late 1950s and through the 1960s, Komatsu was a Japanese company that most American equipment operators had never heard of. Caterpillar dominated the global dozer market so thoroughly that many contractors simply referred to all bulldozers as cats, regardless of who actually made them. Komatsu set out to change that. The company developed the D155A as a direct competitor to the Caterpillar D8, aiming to match or exceed CAT's quality at a lower price point. The D155A was a robust, reliable machine that was built to Japanese manufacturing standards, which by the 1960s had already surpassed many American manufacturers in precision and quality control. The D155A was powered by a Komatsu 6-cylinder turbocharged diesel engine and featured a torque converter with a multi-speed power-shift transmission. It weighed approximately 40 tons and came with a variety of blade options including semi-U, full U, and angle configurations. Every component was designed for durability and ease of maintenance, the same principles that had made Caterpillar's machines successful, but executed with Japanese precision engineering. What made the D155 a truly revolutionary was not the machine itself, but what it represented. For the first time, Caterpillar faced a legitimate global competitor that could match its quality, reliability, and dealer support. Komatsu backed the D155A with an aggressive global expansion strategy, establishing dealer networks in Asia, Oceania, the Middle East, South America, and eventually North America and Europe. The impact was seismic. Caterpillar, which had grown comfortable as the unchallenged leader of the dozer world, was forced to innovate faster, improve quality, and become more responsive to customer needs. The competitive pressure from Komatsu made every Caterpillar dozer better. The D9H, the D10, the D11, and every model that followed were all shaped by the need to stay ahead of Komatsu. Today, Komatsu is the second largest construction equipment manufacturer in the world, and the D155A series is still in production, now in its 8th generation. From the D155A, Komatsu went on to build the D275A, the D375A, the D475A, and eventually the D575A superdozer, the largest production bulldozer ever built at 152 tons. All of that started in the 1960s, with a Japanese company that looked at the most dominant equipment manufacturer on Earth and said, "We can do that too." The D155A did not just change construction, it changed the entire competitive landscape of the global heavy equipment industry, and that is why it sits at number 1 on this list. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which 1960s bulldozer you think had the biggest impact on construction. We would love to hear your stories, especially if you have ever operated one of these classic machines. Until next time, keep pushing dirt.